Questions from the internet. Let's go.
Yeah, quick questions for the internet. The question is, seller wants to list for 17% above comps.
Wow.
How do you approach listing presentation? How do you approach this listing presentation?
Yeah, it's a great one. So this is where I get into the buyer psychology. And what I do is I help a seller understand, and I think most people have seen this slide, but how effectively are you helping the seller understand the power behind this data? And what this slide for me shows is that whenever a property hits the market and the pricing is right at perceived market value, then we know 60% of the buyers that are ready, willing, and able to buy that home will show up to see that home because it's priced where it should be. Okay. Now, the way I explain it to a seller is one strategy, right? I don't say idiots will do this or it's really dumb if you did this. I just give them space because maybe this was their idea beforehand. But I say one strategy is to price your home a little bit above market value so that way you have room to negotiate when a buyer writes you an offer. Some
Mhm.
sellers approach selling their home with that strategy in mind. What they don't recognize, though, and I show it on the slide, when they price their home above market value, they're starting to really chip away at the number of people who even show up to see it. Now, I've already explained to them that my entire marketing method is to do one thing and one thing only. It's to get buyers through the front door. That's the main purpose of all of the things that we do for marketing is to get someone from shopping online, loving what they see online, whatever it is. I need them in their front through the front door because
Mhm.
they'll shop like crazy, but they don't decide to buy until they're standing in that kitchen, standing at that backyard barbecue, standing in that master bedroom. Like some of those main features of the home that's going to close somebody, they need to be
Mhm.
in that space. That's when they're emotionally connected. So I
Mm.
help them understand based on what I explained about the marketing, get them through the front door. That strategy, what sellers don't understand is that it's going to keep a significant number of people from ever entering the front door.
Mhm.
Then I help them understand. The good news is the reverse can be true. And it is when you sell your home slightly below market value. So that way you can really accentuate the buyer pool. Number one, you're going to have more buyers in your pool, but you're also going to make them really excited. And that's why we can see the stat line, how significantly more people walk through the front door. And I'll tell them where they need to be when they're going to buy your home. And they're the ones who will repeat it to me, standing at my kitchen, standing in the backyard, overlooking the pool, whatever that feature is. So
Nice.
that's how I approach that. The other thing
Nice.
I think is really key, and this is again the buyer psychology part, I show the seller the stats around the time on market versus the interest level in a property. Okay, so that's
Mhm.
another slide. And then another one I show them, which is really important. It looks similar, but it's different. The amount of time on market versus what the property ended up selling for. And
Mm.
it's a line like this. The longer it's on the market, it ends up selling for less than the original asking price. The
Mhm.
percentages go down.
Okay, this guy said, I did a listing presentation last week for sellers in my own neighborhood. I did not know them, but did know they were interviewing other agents.
Mhm.
They just informed me they went with another agent. How do you not take this personally?
I don't know that you don't take it personally. I still do to this day, Cameron, but I do it in a way that is not detrimental. Like for me, I don't want to get mad at them. I do it where I take it personal because I take responsibility saying, what could I have done differently? Okay.
Mm.
Um, I think in the process, it's hard to say because it depends on where these leads are coming from, right? We got to go all the way back to the fundamentals of who are you working with? I'm really lucky, Cameron. Most of my business is repeat and referral business.
Mm.
It's not that often anymore that I'm competing with a lot of other agents. At the most, I might be competing with like one other. Okay. So I don't have that a lot where I'm lined up against, four other agents. That's a lot. So
Mm.
I think it is important though that if you're dealing with a clientele or a lead source, that means you could be in a very red ocean, a lot of competition, that be a question that you ask.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with that. And if you can find out who the other agents are, feel free to ask. Just be matter of fact with it. You
Yeah.
know, hey, so I'm really excited that you're giving me an opportunity to interview for the, you know, for the listing of your home. Are you interviewing any other agents? Yeah. Oh, great. Who are they? Just ask the question.
Mm.
You may not get very far with it because they may not want to share, and that's fine. But don't be hesitant to ask. It's not a problem.
Okay, so let's see. You mentioned you get a lot of your business from referrals. And
Yes,
so
sir.
speaking of getting business, obviously this is one of the main questions that lots of real estate agents have.
Hmm.
So the title of it is How to Get More Listings.
Hmm.
And so 9 months into the business, young realtor, haven't closed a deal yet, but have submitted two offers for two different buyer clients. Tried cold calling ever since I started, and most of the leads I generated ended up nowhere. Stayed as consistent as I could with open houses since I started. Most of my immediate sphere knows I'm in real estate by reaching out to them when I started, meeting them at social events often, and social media engagement. What should I do to get more listings for the year of 2024? Any advice would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, it's a good one. Okay, so I heard a couple qualifiers in there. So I would want to get granular with this agent. They tried cold calling. I would
Mhm.
like to know what try looks like. And that's not being facetious or knocking them. I want to know what that means.
Mm,
Also, I heard as consistent as I could. There again, maybe they're doing this every single day for 4 hours a day, and they're like, that's as consistent as I could be. Or maybe I tried it once and I thought about doing it again. I just don't know what that means. So
mm,
I would want to better understand those qualifiers in there. But here's what I'll tell you. Here's how I built my business, Cameron, before I had a big database. And I tell this story often now. My wife and I were about to have our daughter, Valentina, and I'd been in the business for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years and did fine, right? Like it was good. Like no, I was doing just fine, no big deal.
mhm,
But I was still playing real estate, quite honestly. My wife and I decided when we had our little ones, she would not work. She wanted to be an at-home mom with our kids until they went to elementary school.
mhm,
And that time crept up on me pretty quick. So I was in a position where I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to care for the finances of our family moving forward, and we're having a child. Like I was in meltdown mode. And
mm,
so number 1, I had to make a decision to commit to this business. It was basically burn the boats. Like stop playing real estate. It's time to be a professional. Okay.
mm,
The commitment alone was really important because what that led to is sitting down, getting some support from mentors around me, and laying out a blueprint. And here were the 3 things that I did. Okay. Number 1, knocking doors.
mm,
My door knock strategy, though, was really specific. It was around the cycle of a home selling. So I would door knock around new listings, when that listing went pending, when that listing ultimately sold, and if I could get an open house during that time, around me hosting the open house. Now, I did this type of door knocking because it gave me an opportunity and a purpose with a message to show up to a door more than once, because I know how
mm,
hard it is to cold knock a door and close. But if I could build rapport and start to establish who I really am, I'm someone who is going to follow through. When I say I'm going to do something like return, I'm going to do it. It started to build a momentum in a farm that I had. So I door knocked, and I door knocked around the cycle of a sale. I held open houses because I'm a huge believer in open houses.
mm,
New home salespeople for builders, the Pulte Homes, the KB Homes, the Lennar, that's the only thing that they do every day of their life is essentially hold an open house in the model homes. Okay. That's how powerful that one activity is. I think I've shared this with you, but I'll say it again for the sake of this question. I have a really good buddy of mine, like a partner in the business, Woods Davis.
mm,
Woods ran a team across several states, over 50 agents, and he tested this for 5 months. He had them do consistent open houses. And we're talking agents that were brand new to the business. We're talking agents who maybe were 20 years in the business, like that varied. We're talking properties that were priced really well and properties that were probably overpriced. What he found over that period of time, though, is that on average, his agents would get one new client for every 3 open houses. Now, they were doing some things right there. All right. They were engaging
Mhm.
in real estate conversations, they were doing proper follow up. So, those things definitely led to those metrics. But for every 3 open houses, one new client doesn't mean a closing, but a new client, new buyer, new seller to work with. So I took that very seriously and I was very consistent with doing open houses. And usually I was doing about 4 a month, like once every weekend. So door knocking, open houses, and then the number one thing that I did, and I know I'm saying it three, but it was literally the most important thing, was shoring up that database and a communication plan to people that I knew.
Mhm.
Because why are you going to hold open houses? Why are you going to knock on doors? Why are you going to cold call? Why are you going to network? Why are you going to do all those things if you don't have a very serious plan and ability to follow up with these people to develop that relationship? This
Mhm.
is about relationship development. If you're going to meet someone once, have a great time with them, and never talk to them again, that's not a very effective relationship.
Mhm.
So you have to shore up that database. And some people are resistant because they're like, well, I don't really have a database, or all my database, they've already bought a home. It's like you're not getting it. It's not only about those people, it's about the mechanism, the system, the process. Get that shored up anyway, and then pour those leads in. More importantly, when people go through the process of developing a database with me, they start to really uncover the roots that are available to them that they're not thinking about. It's not just who are your aunts, uncles, cousins, and then your friends. I'll give you an example because I use this analogy all the time. My
Mhm.
cousin is named Dana. Okay, it's my mom's sister's daughter, my cousin, Dana. When Dana was growing up, she had a really good friend named Megan. Okay, that Megan was like her best friend, super fun, loud personality, right? And so Megan was part of the family because whenever we'd see them on weekends, Megan was always there. It's her bestie. Okay, Megan's mom is named Carol. We obviously got to know them because Megan was always around and the mom would come around and she was super nice. If I was walking down the aisle of a grocery store right now, Cameron, and I was minding my own business, but Carol saw me, Carol absolutely would be like, Joey, what are you doing here? This is my cousin's best friend's mom. And Carol needs to be in my database and in yours. We really have to be mindful about the connections and the relationships, the roots of our network, and make sure we get them into our database. I think if people did that, they would find a lot more opportunities in their database and it's way bigger than they thought. Shore up that communication so you can get the business from them, but then that's the same process you pour your leads into as well.
Um, this one says, how do you deal with a seller who lets you go through your whole listing presentation
Uh-huh.
and then they tell you that they were planning on doing a for sale by owner? So I'm assuming that they did the listing presentation, the agent came in, did the listing presentation, and then after that, the seller was like, "Hey, we're considering going for sale by owner."
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I've never had that happen before, in all fairness.
Hmm.
But I think it's really important that people know the data behind for sale by owners. How much less do they sell for in your specific market versus a home that's listed professionally?
Hmm.
If you walk around with that kind of data or information at your disposal, then I think a really easy transition could be, okay, great. So you're thinking about selling it on your own. Let me ask you why? What's the purpose behind you selling it on your own? And most of the time people will answer, but if they're not going to cut to the chase, you can simply ask them, is this to save money? Are you worried about paying commissions? That's 90% of the reason why that happens. And if that's the case, you go, okay, great. I totally understand your concern there. But let me ask you maybe a more important question. Are you more worried about compensation that you pay, or is it more important to you about the bottom line, how much money you walk away with when you sell your home? Because most people who are at least not upset with agents for some strange reason, because it could happen, but most reasonable people will say, well, I'm just thinking of my bottom line. Like, I just want the most I can get out of my home. Then if you can speak to them with data to help them understand that hiring you as a professional actually net them enough to not only pay for your services, but that will still be a positive to their bottom line versus selling it on their own. Now you're having a conversation with them that is not um, emotionally energized. It's one that's more matter of fact.
Nice, nice. It says, what do you do if the owner wants to list for like 50 to $100,000 over market value, even after showing them comps? And then it says, I explain the market and how starting so overpriced and then doing price drops is more detrimental than starting at a better price
Yep.
right off the bat, and potentially getting offers calling for best and final. He wants to list, so the seller wants to list for $500,000. Comps show similar properties sold at 375 to 425.
Oof.
A new construction nearby sold for 460, and his property was built in 1930. He wasn't really interested in hearing what I had to say as far as comps and pricing because he had his mind set on trying to get $500,000.
Okay.
He let me know he'll be interviewing a few other agents as well. I'm sure many agents will tell him anything to get the listing and then hope he drops the price so it can sell.
Mhm.
Is that what I should do as well, or what should I do?
Yeah, that's actually a good and a different question. So a couple of things. Like number one, it sounds like they did run numbers with them. One of the things that I try to do with a seller like this, because if you think about that conversation, it feels combative. Okay.
Mm,
What I'm going to try to do is align myself as their partner, their team. So instead of us
mm,
doing this, I'm trying to come around and say, no, I'm on your side. Here's how I do it.
mm,
What I'll help them understand is like, listen, you have to know that what I really appreciate about how we're approaching compensation is that our goals are aligned. So Cameron, you understand, like if I have the ability to, I'm gonna sell your home for $1 million
mhm,
because when you make more, I get compensated more. So our goals are aligned. I want you to understand that. I'm with you. Here's my concern. And then we can speak to a bunch of different data points. It could be uh, the data point we talked about when a home hits the market, where it's at on perceived value is going to mean who even walks through the door. You can definitely point to the other properties around the specific comparables like this agent did. One of the other approaches I can take with a seller is listen, here's my concern for you. Even if I did an amazing job in my marketing and salesmanship and got a buyer to write an offer for you at $1 million. Here's my concern. If it's financed, how are we going to substantiate value to an appraiser? So even if I could do what you're asking for, I'm concerned that it still won't come to fruition because an appraiser is still going to apply their value and I can't substantiate the amount that we're talking about.
mhm,
So there's several ways that you could do it, but I think the most important thing to do is help them understand that I'm not your competition here. It's not, my idea is better than yours. I'm on your side, but from the perspective of me trying to help you be successful, let me share with you why, even though I'm on your side, why that could be a failed experiment.
mm,
Finally, finally. Now this is going to be a tough one for the example that we have. But let's say we're talking about a seller that's like, listen, you know, properties are selling for 375. I really want to try for 400. Here's something that I can do, but you really got to make sure not only you pin them down on agreement, but you might even make sure that you write it in your listing contract as well. And that's this. All right, seller, here's what we're going to do. Now, the example we got, that's way out there. I don't think that will ever work. So,
mhm,
but I'm talking one that's a little more reasonable, a little bit closer to
mhm,
reality.
mhm,
Here's what we're going to do. And this is part of my listing presentation anyway, but I show them. We know that after about 6 weeks on the market, traditionally, that's when the interest level of a property falls off the map. It's like a
mhm,
cliff. Okay. That's like the death nail, 6 weeks.
mhm,
Right.
mhm,
So we could approach your pricing strategy, but at the longest, if 21 days go by and we don't have showings and offers, then you need to agree to sit down with me again so we can reassess value and then properly make the price change that we need to get you under contract within the next 2 weeks thereafter. And like one of the other agents said in the question, that like in our 375 to 400 example, it wouldn't be going, okay, well, let's go back to 375 because that's not going to cut it now. We're probably going to have to go down to like a 369, a 365 to really show a powerful transition in pricing to get people energized to show up. But if I don't get a seller to be reasonable and agree to that, I'm not taking that listing because you're going to spend money on marketing, professional video and photo. You're coming out of pocket on a failed experiment, and you know that as an agent.
Mm.
So, unfortunately, in like the dynamic this agent talked about, I know it hurts, but it sounds to me like that seller is going to go find whatever agent's willing to do that for them. And if they're that hard set on it, let someone else go and spend their money because they very likely won't get it back.